Hello, everyone. Welcome to Authors in Conversation. I am so pleased that you joined us. I'm Pamela Marshall, author of The Art of Forgiveness and your host for this show. I'm very pleased to have with me my guest today, Shana Smith and Joel Shulkin. These authors with some really, really fascinating stories that are told in their books. Both of them are thrillers of sorts, a kind of ghostly thriller. And then Joel, as I was reading yours, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And it's always fascinating, Shana, your story from a historic perspective, but bringing together two very unlikely characters, the story from Rosewood and the destruction of that African American community, but bringing in a KKK person into your story. That's quite interesting. How did you muster that up?
Well, it's a fictional story, Islands of Cedars, but based very much on fact. As it turns out, back in like the 80s, there was a bar in Cedar Key. It was called the Sundowner Bar, and I think the name says it all. For those who are familiar with the concept, reality, unfortunately, of a sundown town, right around the time of Jim Crow, there used to be a very vibrant African American population in Cedar Key, but then when segregation became an unfortunate reality, certain towns that were predominantly white and wanted to stay that way, um, basically minorities were not welcome after dark. So the Sundowner Bar was where a certain, shall we say, unsavory individual in particular that some people in Cedar Key probably remember lived. Now, I don't know for a fact if there was a Ku Klux Klan unofficial chapter there, but I did make it a similar type of location in my book called the Scratch Bar. And there, the Ku Klux Klan continued to meet unofficially. Um, they have, several generations, and from the turn of the century all the way to the present. So this book does marry the descendants of the first victim of Rosewood with a descendant of the Ku Klux Klan lineage, unfortunately, and a Native American descendant whose history could be traced back farther than anybody's, back to the Potano peoples. And these three unlikely protagonists um, come together and kind of face their trauma, their collective trauma, as well as their individual life traumas, to transform uh, the future.
And Dr. Shulkin, as you are a doctor that deals with trauma, then you write a book. The title of your book, Toxic, the first word. That's not good.
No.
Tell us about your book.
So, Toxic Effects is it's the second book in the Memory Thieves series. The first book being Adverse Effects, and the series follows neuropsychiatrist Christina Silva, who is so impressed with the results of an experimental memory drug that she's been using on her patients, and desperate to restore memories that she lost in a crash that claimed her parents' lives, that she starts popping the pills herself. And everything is great. She's remembering who she is. She remembers her parents. And then she starts having memories that don't belong to her. And so as she starts trying to sort out her two distinct lives, one that was her real life and the other that she barely remembers, and the other life that was fabricated by this drug, in Toxic Effects, she's finally starting to get her life back on track. And then she learns that someone is targeting anyone who was affiliated with the drug company that produced that memory drug, including Christine. And the assassin is herself suffering from memory glitches. And it turns out that she and Christina have more in common with each other than either predator or prey knows.
I know. That's what I was saying when I was really like, whoa. So for both of you, Shana, even though your story has some historical facts in it, it's always fascinating to me to find out how in the world do you sit down and you start writing and you come up with these storylines. Where does all of that come from?
Do you want me to go first, Joel, or?
Oh, I thought it was this to you.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I know. I want to hear your story on that. This book, I actually explain it at the end of the book why I wrote it. Having no genetic connection whatsoever, and being a first generation Floridian for that matter. I was actually born in Hawaii and came here in high school. So I think, well, ultimately, I was captivated by Northwest Florida and the absolute beauty. And when I started to learn some of the not so beautiful undercurrents in terms of racial divisiveness, it moved me and hurt me deeply. And I wrote a book. And also the environmental, equally devastating was the environmental, um, crisis that we're facing that's really affecting. I have a master's degree in oceanography, and so this is also a big part of this book, equal parts history and ecological awareness and facts. Um, I wanted to try to resolve, this issue of relationships, the relationships we have with each other and with the planet. And if you think about it, they're not two, it's all about how we care for each other that reflects in the environment around us. So I did a deep dive into this when I was in high school. I wrote my first book. It was called Cedar Key, and it was all about a shopping mall that was going to be built. And of course, a hurricane came. It was kind of a cliche plot, but it was a start, and then it ruminated for a long time. And when I learned about Rosewood, and I worked for the Seminole tribe of Florida as well, so I learned about Native American history firsthand. I wanted to, bring all of these elements together um, under the umbrella of transformation based on relationship. And that's where I was coming from with this. And I'll tell you what, it wrote itself from there. I started with the first victim of Rosewood, Sam Carter, and followed what happened in the 100 years since. Sam Carter becomes actually becomes a ghost in this novel. And he, along with the native ancestors, guide the descendants towards self-discovery, personally, and in relationship to each other. And then, as I did more and more research and learned about the real history of the area and what's being done now with the Cedar Key Historical Society and the Rosewood Heritage Foundation, more story elements came in, and I just followed the lead that was presenting itself as I kept looking more and more deeply into the story. This is now the first of a series, so this is just the beginning. You start at the tip of the iceberg, and then there's so much more to explore. So I'm writing the second one now.
And so, Joel, as your story unfolds, how and Shana talks about the historic aspect and those things playing a role as an author of a complete fiction. How does your story evolve?
Yeah, I was going to say mine didn't start out with quite as deep a plan as Shana's, but it actually started out. I've lived in many places. I grew up in New England, but I was stationed overseas in Germany. I've lived in Manhattan. I've lived in Hawaii for 6 weeks, doing some locum tenens. Now I'm in Florida, and so I was doing my fellowship in developmental medicine at Boston Children's and Harvard. And I would ride the bus or the train into work just because it was easier. And one day, on a particularly snowy day, I was riding in, and the bus was completely empty. It was just me and the driver, and I was just sitting close to the heater. And then the bus stopped, and a guy got on, all bundled up, and out of an entirely empty bus, he decided to sit right directly behind me. And I thought that was a little odd, and it made me somewhat uncomfortable. But then my writer's mind started worrying, and I started thinking how really creeped out a woman might be in that situation. Especially if the man then leaned forward and said something like, "I know who you really are. Nothing you know is true. Everything is a lie." And I got home, and it was shortly after I got married. My wife is from Brazil, and so she had just come into the country maybe 4 months earlier. And so I told her about it, and we started hashing ideas out about, well, maybe she's a psychiatrist, and maybe she lost her memory, and she thinks that she is that who she thinks she is isn't who she really is.
So hold on a second. So you had been writing already?
I had been, not this story. I had been writing when I got out of the military. I had started writing some ideas for like children's books and actually a fantasy thriller series that I really didn't know what I was doing. I was querying agents with a 50,000 word book, so I didn't really know what I was doing at that point. And I was starting to get the idea of writing something medical, like medical thrillers, because I'd met Michael Palmer, who was a very well-known medical thriller author, at a medical society meeting a few months before that, and got some ideas from him about how to go about trying to write a medical thriller. So at that point, I was already primed when this idea popped in my head.
Wow.
And then, I literally just started sitting down, and each day I would write out 1 to 2 chapters, and I would give them to my wife to look at, and then she would read them, and then she would say, "Go write the next one. Go write the next one."
Wow.
Nice.
So he leans forward and says, "I know who you really are." And that
Right.
planted the seed. Look, I'm acting like he's real. He leaned forward.
Right.
And so the characters just start to go.
Yep. So the first book, I pretty much just pantsed it. I wrote, just chapter by chapter. I had an idea where I want, but I just kind of let the story go from there. Mm-hmm. The second book, I had more of a deadline because it was a 2-book deal. And so I had a rough outline, at least, to kind of follow. That being said, I completely rewrote the book 3 times before we got what we have now on sale.
Wow. It's so you had an agent.
So I didn't have an agent until so I started writing Adverse Effects, the first book, about 11 or 12 years ago, and I only got my agent about 3 years ago.
Gotcha. Shana, do you have an agent?
I don't. I'm working with St. Petersburg Press in St. Petersburg, and they're just wonderful people I've had the privilege to know for a while. And they also represent Paul Wilborn, if you know him, and Mayor Kreisman's wife, who wrote a really, really interesting book, and I just really admired what they were doing. So I was thrilled they were interested.
So as you all are in your different spaces and stages of being authors, what is it that you recommend to people who are watching going, I really want to do this, but I'm not sure how to start?
For me, I had written in high school, took some college courses, but like I said, I really wasn't writing until after my residency, after serving in the military for 3 years. And I thought I knew what I was doing, but I actually started out writing just short stories just to kind of get an idea. And I actually got a couple of those published. But after that, then I started reading books about, honing the craft. I read Stephen King's book on writing. I read some other ones that were, from either by authors or by agents. And I took some online courses. And then I also had to take courses just on how to query, how to send a query letter, because that I really found out is an art in itself. And so I think that was the key. And then I had friends who would review and look things over. There was actually a great website called Query Tracker that was really helpful both for finding agents who fell within my genre, keeping track of it, and then they had a forum where I could post a query letter, the first chapter, and get feedback from other authors, or other writers. So that, I think, in itself was invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
Shana?
The question, forgive me.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay.
I was really compelled.
Right. Advice to people who do want to write.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, just right. Yeah, I think I've always wanted to be a writer, and I'm a songwriter. I have been a songwriter since I was 6. Lots and lots of songs. I have a long career as a children's singer-songwriter, Shana Banana. But I also love writing. But life, you always have excuses not to write. And I have to say, Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. I'm probably not the only one who was moved by her book. She says, write every day. Even if you're just writing, I don't know what to write. I have writer's block. Just write it, write it, however it works best. It doesn't matter. She calls them the morning pages. So I would say that started my daily practice, journaling. Journaling's a wonderful way just to keep that association with what's in your mind and your heart and what gets expressed on the paper.
It's been said that good artists study great artists and great artists copy. Do you find that reading other people that you enjoy, that it helps to spark inspiration for you?
Yes, definitely. I think I'll follow my Zen training. The Buddha says glean from many sources. So, constantly exposing yourself, to what's out there and what moves you. I don't know that you're necessarily copying, but you're definitely, like in music, you're influenced by. Sometimes you don't even know it, like it all comes out, and then somebody says, "My gosh, that's like Steinbeck meets Kingsolver meets, Amy Tan or something like that." And you're like, "I love those authors," and then there you go,
Yeah, like for me, when I was starting out with this idea for this book, I read through Michael Palmer's books, Tess Gerritsen, Robin Cook, those who had come before me to kind of get an idea of what am I looking for. I still love reading, other thrillers, but every so often I'll read something in another genre too, because I'll get ideas that I can pull in that haven't been done maybe in my genre before.
Yeah.
Well, I think that maybe people sometimes feel like, as you said, not knowing where to start, but just to start writing. And whether you're writing because you want to be published, or, Shana, you're in the Zen meditative kind of world, just how therapeutic it is for people to write as they go through life.
Right. I keep saying right. Absolutely. Actually, my first book, I wish I didn't bring a copy, but it's called Meditation for Moms and Dads. It's nonfiction, totally different. But it was simply therapy. It was just a way to work with, this desire to have an active meditation practice as an engaged parent. And it turned out to be a book. I would say that writing for an assignment versus writing for an offering are a little bit different. I mean, you can merge the two, but
writing for an assignment.
Right. I got to stop that. Correct. Yeah, like if you're a freelance writer or you're under contract, which is a lot of fun. I do that too, but it's a little bit different than something that, like in your case, Joel, that just bubbles up from an experience. That's your own momentum that writes. This very similar in that regard.
Yeah. So Joel, you won awards. Tell us about some of the awards that you won.
Yes. So actually, just recently, Toxic Effects was a finalist in BestThrillers.com's annual book awards for medical thrillers. So that was a big one. I also, what got me started was I had written a short story, a little medical short story for this contest that no longer exists, but it was by this organization that used to do author courses for doctors who wanted to be writers, and they would actually have Tess Gerritsen and Michael Palmer teach it. And so I entered the contest and won first prize, and that kind of got me like, I guess I'm on the right track. So, so I've had a couple of those awards.
So is that common? I mean, it must be more than just you and the other names that you mentioned. Physicians who want to be authors. What's the correlation there?
Well, I mean, if you think back, even Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle, had been had graduated from medical school, as did Michael Crichton. So there definitely is something about that desire to solve medical mysteries that can carry over into writing mysteries. I think also having that background in medicine, knowing how the body works, because when we talk about what might scare people, well, disease and something happening to our health is certainly one of the most frightening things out there. And so I think there's a lot that having that knowledge that we can bring in. I've actually written several articles and done a few videos on mistakes that I see in medical scenes, either in fiction or on TV, and there's quite a few. So the most common one is you don't shock flatline, because that really doesn't do anything, but you still see because it's dramatic, right? So
you don't.
Nope.
What?
I know, right?
Not only does it not work, but because there's no electrical activity. Defibrillators, if you think about it, is only supposed to correct fibrillation, ventricular fibrillation or atrial fibrillation. So when you're doing that, all you're doing is burning the chest cavity.
Like trying to reanimate.
Right.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And then they do it more than once. Do it again.
Right.
Again.
No, we've been duped. I feel duped. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Thanks
I'm
for.
so glad you told me that.
Me too.
Absolutely. Now pay attention to that next time. Actually, I
Just
read a book recently, and they did it, and I was like, "Come on, really?" And it was by my publisher. And I even wrote to them. I said, "Why? Please, run this by me beforehand."
Right.
Or stand up in the theater. That's fake.
Right.
I'm a doctor. I know.
Right. Shana, you mentioned that you write songs and you've recorded.
Mm-hmm.
What about a song?
I thought you'd never ask.
So Shana, tell us about this song that you're going to do.
Yeah, sure. It's a song about Rosewood, actually.
It's
about Rosewood, and it's called Rosewood, FLA. And the reason I feel kind of passionate about this too, and kind of bringing in whatever offerings I can, is because we're about to hit the Rosewood centennial, the 100-year anniversary of that tragic massacre, and people don't know about it. I mean, it's literally in our backyard. It's 40 miles away, if that, right? And if you go to Cedar Key, there's just a little sign and a plaque, and that's about it. It's not taught in our history books, and I feel like I'd like to be part of, the awareness movement, if possible, just through these types of offerings. I think we all have, have a responsibility there. So I invite you to sing along in one particular part. You're going to say Rosewood, FLA. Okay? 100 years ago, there was fire and brimstone burning all the homes where many children did grow. How was I to know when there's just a sign on the road that the beauty of this hammock holds a secret of darkest truths? unspoken in our shame, until we find a way out from beneath it. We must say it aloud and say the name Rosewood FLA. So I invite you to say the name with that part. When I walk through Rosewood hammocks, see the oak trees spread their limbs, I think of old Sam Carter, can't stop thinking about him. How his own limbs hung like Spanish moss, swaying in the breeze. The first victim of hate, spread like a disease. Remember it today, Rosewood
FLA.
Joel, do you say so?
Yeah.
Story's not well known. Even though a whole town was burned to the ground, everybody lynched, shot or gone all for a lie. So convenient to blame, and now no one will read it in our history books. Descendants still have to live in fear until we find a way out from beneath this. We must say it aloud and say it clear.
Rosewood FLA.
As I walk through Rosewood hammocks, see the oaks and palm trees sway, I bow my heart, saying my heart this loss won't be in vain. Your heathen today spreads like a terrible disease. We're all coming together, so come and join me, please. So suffering can't sustain, let's all say the name
Rosewood FLA.
Here so much beauty grows in soil soaked in blood and wounds. Just leave it to this earth to show the way. So now let's walk the Rosewood hammocks, see the oaks and palm trees sway. Let's bow our heads, swearing in our hearts this loss won't be in vain. Oh, breathing today spreads like a terrible disease. We're all coming together, so join us if you please. So suffering won't sustain, let's all say the name. Ready?
Rosewood FLA.
Thank you.
Woohoo!
Yay.
Good job, Joel. Good job,
Thanks.
Sheena.
Yeah, very nice.
Good job, me. Lip sync.
Well, I did write some songs beforehand, but I don't have my guitar ready. But if you go to SoundClick and you look up soundclick.com, you look up scene stealing extras, you'll find my demos on there.
Really?
Check
Yeah.
that out. Awesome.
Oh, wow. So, you know what? Maybe. So, everybody watching, Joel and Shana will be in Gainesville, Florida on the 27th and 28th of January for the Sunshine State Book Festival. And maybe you guys can sing together. Joel, bring your guitar.
I'll bring my guitar.
Yeah, would you really? Awesome.
Bring your guitar and you can be a scene stiller.
Just have
Both
to tune
of
it.
you.
Yep.
Huh?
I just have to tune it. I haven't used it in a while.
Well, that's interesting. So you haven't written anything. You haven't written anything that relates to any of your books, though.
No, I was actually writing some songs again between residency and the time I got out of the military. But then when I shifted to writing novels, I kind of didn't have time to do as much on the songwriting.
Gotcha. Well, we have been informed, enlightened, thrilled, and I know that the audience have enjoyed what you all are doing, what you all have had to say this evening. Gertrude Copeland from Jackson, Tennessee. Hey, Pamela. Hey, you, Gertrude. Thank you for watching. And Davis Louise McKinney. You know, it's funny. She said, hello, Pam, but then she corrected and said, hello, Pamela. That's so sweet of you. That is my preference. But I'll be at the Sunshine State Book Festival as well with my book, The Art of Forgiveness and Expression of Peace. So, Joel, since you say you like to read something a little out of your genre, that would be something that you could read. What is it so special for you guys to be able to go to a book festival? You know, the Writers Alliance of Gainesville sponsoring this, where they bring writers and authors together. What's special for you?
Just getting the opportunity to interact with readers for sure. You know, because I find that it really helps to be able to engage, you know, to engage them one-on-one, to kind of explain to them about what the book's about, to kind of hear their feedback, and then to talk to other authors too, and network with them and kind of find out about what else is out there too.
Shana?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. Exactly. All that. So, I really want to hear your songs too, Joel. And Pamela, I just don't think I've ever fully expressed how much I appreciate everything you're doing as a fellow author for everyone. It's just it's so generous and really uplifting. Thank you.
Well, it's been fun. It's been fun. I feel like I've been able to get a front seat to the Sunshine State Book Festival and being able to talk to everybody. And I will feel like that I'm seeing some old friends in January, because I will have already met you all. Those that I don't know, Shana, I know you. But those that I've not met, Joel, I'll just look forward to seeing everybody. And everybody, I thank you all for being so generous with your time, as well as generous with the information, the things that you have learned along the way. And thank you. And congratulations to you for completion. Congratulations on your awards. Congratulations to you for letting us into the intimate thoughts that you have by putting them on paper. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
It's great to
You are
meet
so
you.
welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. See you in the Berg or up here.
There we go.
Everybody, I really appreciate you all watching. I appreciate Louise. Louise is always here with us. I thank you so much. And everybody else that's watching, whether you're watching on Facebook, please like and share. We love your comments and your questions. Or on LinkedIn, we appreciate it. And on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the little subscribe button so that you can be notified when we have other great interviews. And if you've not been able to watch the other shows with the authors, please go back and take a look at them. It's really, 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 really fascinating and interesting to see and to hear how these stories come about. I appreciate you too, Louise. Everybody, thank you for watching. I am Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Remember, there is healing at the well. Make it a fantastic moment. We'll see you next time.